When you surrender, when you have the courage to let it all go, you actually win. You don't lose. You don't give up. You actually crack the code of this physical reality. You actually free yourself from the suffering that is self created because we are so attached to things, because we control or over control every little part of our life. But if you are forcing things right now, if you're struggling, if you're pushing, if just everything is going absolutely wrong, just let it go. Just surrender it. Something crazy happens when you let go. Letting go makes you neutral, okay? When you become neutral, when you become balanced, when you transcend living in the past or living in the future, and you realize that your suffering is self created, and you basically realize that you are not your mind, you are your soul, you are the observer of everything. You don't get caught up in all this BS polarization that is meant to hack your energy, to drain your energy. When you become neutral, you unlock the 0 point. And as we know, 0 point energy, it's very subtle, but it's limitless. All right, so we're going to talk how we can let go of resistance, we can embrace uncertainty, and reduce unnecessary suffering and basically unlock our full power in this one. First, we got to talk about why exactly stress and anxiety occur. Why do we suffer? Stress occurs in the mind as a natural human response to perceived challenges or threats, triggering the fight or flight response. An excessive focus on trying to control things, especially those beyond your influence, is a significant source of stress and anxiety. So, stress basically arises when we are trying to control something that cannot be controlled, or it comes when we perceive something as a threat. And it's probably things that aren't really threats to our existence, like something dealing with our job, stressed about being late to something, worrying about what other people think. It's like these very, very trivial things that we build up in our head as real problems. And our brain is doing all this just to try to keep us safe, to keep us safe from that perceived danger. But the thing is, can we ever really be safe? So much of our life is about chasing security. We always want more money. We think a relationship will make us happy. All these material things that provide short term security, but in the end, don't mean anything. In reality, security is an illusion. In reality, and it is scary to think about, but everything can be taken away in an instant. Everything can change in an instant. Things are actually so impermanent in life, and the only thing that's constant is change. But we cling to how things have been because they're familiar. In reality, life, like everything is so dependent on each other and everything is so connected that one little shift can throw our whole life out of balance. It's like that house of cards right there. One little shift, movement of the card, makes the whole thing collapse. And this is scary for sure. But coming to terms with this, coming to peace with this, is the key to freedom, is the key to ending our suffering. True security lies in the unrestrained embrace of insecurity, in the recognition that we never really stand on solid ground and never can. When you embrace feeling insecure, it's like you no longer are scared of losing. And when you live life not scared to lose, not scared to cling to what you have, that is true freedom. I love this quote by Helen Keller. She said, "Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or it's nothing." We can sit back, we can play it safe, but again, it is the illusion of security. We're no safer than if we were out there living life to the fullest, if we were out there taking risks. And it's like pain and struggle are inevitable. We can't really avoid that. But it's either we keep ourselves trapped in this little box of the illusion of safety and just avoid all discomfort. And I know people like that in life. And low key, like they're sad, they're depressed because they're living at a fraction of themselves and they're just stagnant. But we can also choose struggles that are worth enduring that will lead to our growth. The thing that's keeping us back, though, is that throughout our lives, we have built up this mental wall to protect ourselves from the danger, perceived danger of risk and uncertainty, to protect ourselves from really jumping into the unknown. Our mind is so great at dreaming up all these scenarios of what could go wrong, and it keeps us stuck where we are. Again, we're clinging to the familiar. And the wall may keep some dangers out. The wall might keep us safe from putting ourselves out there and being perceived and being judged to an extent. But it also keeps the entirety of life out too. And it keeps our potential out. And it keeps us from exploring the endless possibilities that could happen. It keeps the unwanted outcomes away, but it also traps us in a box and separates us from what we do actually want in life. So that light there in the picture is that little glimpse of freedom that we get when we just throw ourselves into the unknown without trying to anticipate what will happen, without expecting what will happen, and just doing it. And not living a life anymore of sedation, right? Of avoiding things, of clinging to comfort. The unknown is where we're going to evolve. But to really throw ourselves into the unknown, we got to stop trying to control the direction of our lives. I used to be a chronic controller. I mean, I would try to not really control what other people wanted to do, but when they didn't fit the expectation of what I thought they would do or should do, I got all in a tizzy. When things didn't go exactly how I planned them, I would just basically have a meltdown. We control things because we want to stay in what we know. The uncertainty is too much for our little brain, right? But our soul, the expansive part of us, thrives in the unknown. The crazy thing that happens is that when we try to control things and we stay stuck inside what we know or what we can anticipate or envision, we are subconsciously creating the same experience. We're basically living in a loop. We're living in a time loop or a thought loop where we are essentially experiencing the same things over and over again in different form. That to me is honestly like, that's what hell is. Our mind is controlling because it thinks linearly. But in previous videos, we talked about how that is very limiting. And there is a more expansive part of us that thinks more expansively. When we try to imagine and create a new future for ourselves, it gets uncomfortable because our mind cannot predict it. The mind loves linear thinking. It loves repetition. It loves what is familiar. When we demand, being certain about everything that will happen, we just recreate the same reality over and over again. When we surrender all that, we can actually step into the unknown where new futures, new possibilities exist. And when we try to over control things, we just create more resistance. We're fighting against life and it's going to fight back to us. We're going to cause a lot more stress, a lot more suffering, a lot more energy draining, trying to fight life, trying to control exactly how outcomes will happen in life. That's when reality gets distorted and it disrupts like the flow of it. I find that every time I try to force something, no matter how small of a force it is, things really do get distorted. And a powerful thing for me was when I stopped getting so attached. The Buddha said, attachment is the root of all suffering. We have desires. Like, there's nothing wrong with having desires in life. But we tend to get to a point where we obsess over them so much. And when what we actually get doesn't fit the defined picture that we had in our head, it's like you're closing yourself off from the gifts, the possibilities that life could actually give you. Chinese have a term, I think I've talked about it in previous videos, but wu wei. It means non-doing. So when we're living life from a third dimensional perspective, we think that all action is equal. We think that, we gotta grind. We gotta work, even if we don't feel like it. And there is times when you need to do that for sure. But if you look at things from a higher dimensional perspective, an energetical perspective, when you are taking action and it feels overly forced, you're taking action not from excitement, not from passion, but you're taking action out of fear or scarcity. That is going to drain the shit out of your energy. We all know the difference between that and actually taking inspired action, action from alignment or clarity of ourselves or our purpose. It feels effortless. And that action, even if it's not as much action as the forced action, it has more of an energetical impact. it has more of a ripple effect on our external environment. Going back to the video, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 videos ago. It didn't get many views, which I was surprised. I thought there was some super good info in there. Watch that one after this, but I basically talked about how you can hack the laws of physics to manifest effortlessly. Everything in the universe, it is operating with the least amount of effort possible for the most amount of results. That's what nature does. And so in that video, I compared manifestation to the perfect jump shot, basketball jump shot, where you have a strong base, everything is aligned, and the energy that you produce from your feet is transferred the whole way up through your fingertips to the ball and then to the basket. If you have a very efficient jump shot, you're going to produce the most amount of energy with the least amount of effort because everything is aligned. Everything in the chain is working most efficiently. So we have to really let our energy only shoot in the most efficient direction with the least effort. So, do you feel drained when you take action? Do you feel like you need to do it out of scarcity or uncertainty? Action taken because of those emotions is not going to have as much of a payoff. And shit, honestly, if nothing is going right in your life, right? Like, go left. Try not doing anything. Try just letting things balance themselves out because that's what nature is trying to do anyway. It's always trying to balance itself out, find equilibrium. Why don't you try to just do nothing, right? And you can talk about flowing like water. If we be like water, water is always trying to flow effortlessly in the direction of least resistance. It's easily going around obstacles. It's not fighting the obstacles. The river doesn't argue with the rocks, it flows around them. We move with the current, the flow of life. We don't try to fight it. We don't try to resist. That's when we unlock a certain kind of limitless energy. Some crazy things happen when we surrender, when we let go in our brain. When we surrender control, our brain enters a state of coherence. So the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere synchronize. And it's basically like what happens in meditation. That little bridge connecting the right and the left hemisphere, it's called the corpus callosum. That thing gets stimulated when we reach states of meditation, states of presence, or states of peace and acceptance and surrender. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the amazing benefits of balancing the left and right hemispheres. I'm sure you've heard enough about it, but that is the key to really unlocking our power, I believe, as humans. And of course, when we surrender, we are going to be able to actually relax. When we relax, that is the most true and authentic, not giving a shit version of ourselves. Creating an internal state of relaxation is the key to freeing ourselves from suffering. No matter what is going on outside of us, we can create that state within. And we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which we know our heart rate slows down, our breathing slows, our muscles relax. And from a state of calmness, we can access higher levels of consciousness. We can actually pull ourselves out of the day-to-day struggles that we keep fighting with and start to view life from a higher level. And if we trust that things are going to go in our best interest, that the universe is on our side, if we let go of having to over control, we activate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for decision making and executive functions. When we surrender, we enhance our cognitive flexibility or our neuroplasticity, and we open ourselves up to new possibilities that have not been apparent before. And so, what does surrender look like in practice? I boiled it down to 3 things. First, it's something I call the relaxation cue. This can be different for everyone. Experiment with stuff and figure out what works for you. When I notice myself stressing or trying to over control, first you got to hit the pause button, right? Then I slow my breathing down and I relax my body. I relax my body fully. For some reason, that makes me feel limitless. It makes me feel expansive and not restricted. And I do have to remind myself, I don't need to control this. I can just let this happen. It's going to work out no matter what. And at the same time, you become very, very powerful if you cultivate the subconscious belief. We're doing some rewiring in there. Change our beliefs, change how we see reality, reality changes. Cultivate the belief that everything is working out in your favor, no matter what it is. Life is always trying to help you evolve. even if it gives you tough situations. We're not running from those tough situations. We're not running from the uncomfortableness. We're not running towards what we know. We are stepping into the unknown. And we got to reframe challenges as evolution and not as punishment or the universe is against me, life is against me, everyone is against me. There are lessons in everything. That's how you can alchemize your struggles into successes. And the third thing, this one was absolutely huge for me, growing up on the grind culture. I had to really remind myself that surrendering does not mean that I'm passive or I'm lazy. It actually means I'm living life in a smarter way. I'm navigating life in the most efficient and natural way possible instead of forcing things. And the last thing that I realized is that below the surface of my consciousness, what was really the base of all my fears was a fear of death. When you embrace death, when you're no longer scared of death, I think that's when, in a way, you actually become immortal because you realize that there is actually no such thing as death. And looking at it from another angle, if we are going to die in this life, like if our life is going to end, why are we wasting all of our valuable energy trying to control everything? Why are we inducing our own suffering? Why are we afraid to step into the unknown? Why are we afraid to be authentic? When we accept death, we gain the freedom to act without giving a shit. So it's time to stop being scared. It's time to come to terms with that life is always uncertain. And when you stop fighting that uncertainty and just embrace it, you win. Hopefully that helped. See ya.